Okay, so I already recommended Lenin's What is to be Done, and a lot of people recommend this short little piece of work. I think it is consisting of several brochures that were published in newspapers at Lenin's time, but I'm going to recommend it once again because it is a very good example of what dialectical materialism can look like in action, because Lenin is very, very highly flexible, and he shows us how flexible we should be when operating in our little organizational groups. And Lenin, for example, showcases this when he says seemingly contradictory things, when he gives seemingly contradictory advice, when he talks about bigger organizations being very open, very transparent, very public, yet he talks about the smaller core organizations being very strictly conspiratorial. And these two pieces of advice may seem to be contradictory. Like, how can we have a big organization that is fully transparent and inviting pretty much everyone from the working class to participate in organizational efforts, but yet somehow we also are supposed to have an organization that is very small and very much conspiratorial, hidden from everyone, so that even the names of the people, the members of this organization, are not going to be known. How is that possible? Well, and just as I already kind of implied before, Lenin advocated for both of these things at once. He talked about how the core organization should consist of what he calls professional revolutionaries, the people who, due to circumstances, became well versed in the organizational efforts before, who probably already faced all kinds of circumstances and already learned from experience how to deal with the possible police invasion, the possible police brutality, how to avoid it. And those kind of people who already have organizational skills and who already have become well versed in theory, these people, Lenin argued, would be the core, the conspiratorial type of a smaller organization. And the names of the participants of the smaller organization would not be known even to the bigger organization that may be held by the smaller organization. And the bigger organization, he said, should be very, very much all-encompassing and should be open to all the public. It should consist of all the unions and all the people of the working class who feel like the world around them is unjust and who want to organize for better conditions, working conditions, for better pay, for economic justice, and they may also have some political grievances as well. So Lenin advocated for both of these, and how exactly to do that, of course, depends on the material circumstances of each and every situation in each and every location. But during Lenin's time, their efforts paid off. They were, in fact, successful in large-scale organizing efforts and in smaller, more intimate type of organization where the people really dedicated themselves to the revolutionary work, and they were not very well known up until some drastic events started taking place. And they did that because they suffered greatly from the efforts of the gendarmerie, as Lenin refers to them, the police. He actually shared how many young people who would dive headfirst into organizing during those tumultuous times, they would usually have, the organizations would have a lifespan of 4 to 6 months, because then the gendarmerie would crack down on these youths and arrest those who were leaders and the heads of this organization and disperse the rest of the organization, and all of their efforts, therefore, would be in vain. So Lenin talked much about how such beheaded organizations were a real plague to a revolutionary movement in the imperial Russia of his time, and how those young people should be guided by somebody who may be a little bit more experienced. And to whoever wants to come into the comments and say, see, the Bolsheviks were authoritarian from the get-go. Well, first of all, authoritarianism is not an actual issue. As far as I know, authoritarianism as a concept didn't even exist at the beginning of the 20th century, because people understood, normal types of authority and invented hierarchies that were imposed by the capitalist mode of production. So authoritarianism is a very vague term that is pretty hard to narrow down and actually point out what it is. And Bolsheviks actually acted according to necessity. They did not act in a certain manner because they wanted all the power to themselves. Because in the end, what this power did to most of the Bolsheviks, it actually killed them. Okay, it had them imprisoned. Still, even with all their conspiratorial efforts, still some of the members would get arrested and spend years and years in prison, sent to Siberia, sent to all kinds of places. Lenin himself had to flee his country to avoid being arrested. And ultimately, their quality of life suffered immensely. If they really wanted that kind of power, they were strange and bizarre. And I would argue that the vast majority of people would understand that such power is not actually power, it's responsibility. And they try to disperse the responsibility amongst the ranks as much as they could. They wanted to have very efficient, effective, professional, well-read, well-rounded folks being involved in every aspect of the revolution. But unfortunately, such people did not exist because the educational system in the Imperial Russia didn't exist. It was only for the select elites. They would be able to receive education. The rest of the population had to either learn to read themselves or were just uneducated and illiterate. And one of the first Soviet efforts in the early years, even during the Civil War, in the 1917, 1918, 1919, the Bolsheviks, while fighting the civil war against the invading imperial forces from Europe and the white powers who wanted to restore monarchy, and some other actors, many people were involved in this conflict who had no business being involved in this conflict, they simultaneously worked on electrification, making sure that the vast majority of the country would have access to electricity, and building schools so that children, young people, and adults could attend classes which were public, free, and learn to read and learn basic necessary skills in order to continue building that new socialist project. So this all goes to show that Bolsheviks put their money where their mouth was, and they actually proved with action what they preached. So, and of course, I know there's no convincing of the people who think that Bolsheviks were some terrible dictators who just wanted all the power to themselves so that they can die earlier, right? And be totally insane, looking at least like Lenin did in the last few years of his life. Completely burnt out. You can tell by looking at this picture how this person has seen it all, has done it all, and just out of this world. So this is not a fate that is to be envied, for sure, but we can still gain a lot from Lenin's teachings. And of course, we have to be just as flexible as Lenin was in his suggestions. We have to realize that our material circumstances have changed, and our material circumstances actually are worse in many regards. We have gendarmerie, the police, having access to our information if they so wish. We cannot really hide, so it is very difficult to avoid being cracked down on, but it is not impossible, and a lot of people are working on different ways of how to make organizing efforts secure and safe, but this all should be done offline. So be careful what you post online, be careful what you speak about online, but in person, do talk to the people about how you can protect yourself yet still produce some kind of an organizational effort that is going to end up helping you and the larger community that you're a part of. So let me know what you think. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the social medias, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.